Good morning. My name is Anna Perry, and I chose to attend COA because I really wanted a curriculum with enough freedom to study both art and science. The title of my senior project is The Natural History and Nesting Ecology of Leach's Storm Petrel. This project represents the culmination of my 3 years of field research at the Alice Eno Research Center on Great Duck Island, Maine. My project has two primary components: a formal written thesis that includes 3 scientific papers and a series of 5 natural history illustrations. Due to time constraints, I'm going to highlight aspects of this project, but if anyone is interested in the specifics of my work, I'd be very happy to talk with you after the presentation. Although I've had an interest in professional ornithology since an early age, I had never heard of storm petrels before my first season on Great Duck Island. I chose to study Leach's storm petrel because what I read about this species completely defied my preconceptions of what it means to be a marine bird. Leach's storm petrels are the smallest seabirds in the world's oceans. They nest in burrows or crevices, return to their breeding colonies by night, and while foraging on the open ocean, they have the ability to locate plankton drifts due to their ability to smell a compound known as dimethyl sulfide. Previous studies suggest that these species may also be able to find their nest sites using their sense of smell. I'd always heard that birds have no sense of smell, and investigating this question became my first field experiment. This study represents the first chapter of my senior thesis. I designed a tea maze, and I found that adult storm petrels don't demonstrate a preference for the scent of their home burrow. I also discovered that birds with burrows that curved to the right tended to choose the right side of the maze, and birds with burrows that curved to the left chose the left side of the maze. This lateralized behavior was an intriguing finding that I had not initially anticipated when I began the study, and I learned a lot from it. Overall, this project gave me a chance to bring my learning back into the classroom for classes such as statistics, where I was able to analyze my own data. This project also gave me a chance to write my first research grant, which was funded by the Maine Space Grant Consortium. In addition, I presented my first paper at a professional conference held by the International Society for the Waterbird Society, in Barcelona, Spain. When I was not busy working in the field on Great Duck Island, I was busy drawing. This is one of the first illustrations that I completed on the island, showing a herring gull egg that I found broken by the shore. Many of my early illustrations depicted found objects, either bird skulls or bird eggs, and I hope to work up to a portrait of a wild bird like those of John Audubon or John Gould, who were artists that I really admired. However, my field experiences profoundly affected my perception, and the subsequent illustrations that I created reflect this change. This is one of my senior project illustrations. Each of my illustrations depicts the process of handling birds during data collection. I've incorporated these illustrations in my written thesis, and I have also created a display that is currently hanging in the Dorr Museum of Natural History. This particular drawing displays an adult storm petrel that has just been removed from its burrow. In creating this image, I wanted to share my experiences as a field biologist as well as the behavior of the birds that I have worked with. Storm petrels removed from their burrows exhibit varied temperaments, and this particular individual is about to nip my finger. The second chapter of my senior thesis concerns population monitoring efforts for Leach's storm petrels. More specifically, I investigated the distribution of storm petrel abundance on the island by creating island-wide transects and recording the number of burrows that I found relative to a series of habitat parameters. Based upon this work, I was able to determine that the highest concentrations of petrel burrows occur within the first 20 to 40 meters of the forest edge, particularly on the eastward side of the island. And this is of particular importance because Great Duck Island currently exhibits what we call an even age stand, meaning that most of the trees are about the same age. We currently have very few young trees growing up due to grazing by the introduced population of hares that Greg mentioned earlier. I was able to present these findings at another Waterbird Society meeting in Texas. This is another one of my senior project illustrations, and it depicts the process of banding an adult petrel. Bird bands allow biologists to identify individuals using an identification number. Bird bands are issued by the federal government, and all of the information that we collect goes into a federal database in order to track individual survivorship and reproductive success. On the island, we also band and measure chicks. This particular chick is about to be placed in what we call a bird bag in order to be measured with a calibrated spring scale. And this is another way that we keep track of reproductive success and survivorship. For the third chapter of my senior project, I investigated the distribution of storm petrel burrows that are actively occupied by breeding pairs. And this is important because there's a proportion of burrows on the island each year that don't have birds actually residing within them. This is also a rather difficult process. In this photograph, I'm using an infrared video probe to inspect the contents of a burrow, which is occupied by a nesting adult. And this piece of equipment was purchased for the island using funds that I was awarded from a second main space grant. And using this apparatus, I was able to calculate a revised population estimate for the island. This is the final illustration that I will show you this morning. The drawing depicts the traditional method for determining burrow occupancy, and it's a technique known as grubbing. And what grubbing involves is actually reaching your arm into a storm petrel burrow to feel for an egg, chick, or adult. My time on Great Duck Island has strengthened my desire to continue research and to attend graduate school. Following graduation, I will be attending the University of California, Davis for a PhD program in animal behavior. I would like to thank you for your attention, particularly the trustees. My senior project would not have been possible without the generous support of the William H. Drury Fund, as well as the Main Space Grant, and the many people listed here. I'd be happy to take questions.
Are the experiments with tiny computers, which were going on when I went to Great Duck Island about 5 years ago, do they continue? Are they still being used in these studies?
Okay, the question is, are there tiny computers still in the burrows? The project that you're referring to was actually featured in a Wired magazine, and those were a pilot project that was introduced to the island by Intel. And they were, as I understand, they were having numerous problems with the mechanics and learned quite a bit from it. We do currently monitor temperature and relative humidity in the burrows, but not actually using those computers. We use small data loggers known as iButtons, and we do that every year. It's part of the data set that we're building for this population in a controlled study plot. So we are continuing with that, but not with the same technology.
How will you continue your interest in drawing in the future?
Very good question. I intend to continue drawing. I actually, my major professor, the person I'll be working with, Dr. Nevitt, is very excited to have a graduate student that can draw. She's, so I didn't mean to say it quite like that. She's already actually commissioned me to do an illustration for one of her publications, and I'm hoping if her paper's accepted that will go to press. But I intend to continue drawing in the field. Yeah.
Steve. Would you interpret the results of your T-Maze experiment to say that the birds don't use smell to find their burrow, or to say that lateralization trumps smell when two are combined?
Okay, Steve's question was, would I interpret my results to mean that birds don't use smell when they're locating their burrow, and that does the lateralized behavior trump that? And I guess my answer for that, we don't actually know if they're using compounds to find their burrows, what those entail. And so it could be that the burrow soil I collected didn't have a sufficient sampling of those compounds. And this is actually something that I'm really interested in investigating in graduate school, and I'll be continuing with this question, is looking into the specifics of that. In terms of the lateralized behavior, it's interesting because other studies looking at burrow location have also used mazes before. And it is a potential that that could bias the results. So I'm interested in testing that further as well to see if they do have muscle memory for the curvature of their burrow. Does that answer your question? Okay.
In the interest of time, we'll move on, but thank you, Anne.